The Mongols conquered everyone: Russia, Persia, China, Korea, the Islamic world, Eastern Europe. 300 years before Columbus, they built the largest land empire in human history. Every nation that stood against them fell. Cavalry storms that moved faster than messengers, siege engines that cracked cities like eggs, generals who made Europe's knights look like children with sticks. But there's a jungle river in northern Vietnam where even Kublai Khan's best commanders drowned. A narrow corridor where 500 warships turned into splinters and corpses, where 30,000 Vietnamese forces destroyed 140,000 UN troops not once, not twice, but 3 times across 30 years. How? What happened when the greatest military machine ever assembled met farmers who knew every bend in every river? What trap turned dragon-proud ships into coffins? A kingdom that once paid tribute to the song. A corridor that leads to Champa, to Java, to the spice routes. Kublai sends envoys. The message is simple. Submit, pay tribute. Send your princes to my court as hostages, send soldiers for my campaigns. The Tran court in Thang Long looks at the terms. They've seen what happened to everyone else. They imprison the envoys. Uriyangkadai crosses from Yunnan with 3,000 Mongols and 10,000 Yi auxiliaries from the conquered Dali kingdom. He's Subutai's son. His father destroyed armies in Russia and Hungary. The Vietnamese have war elephants, heavy cavalry from their own campaigns against Champa. Uriyangkadai studies the terrain. January 1712, 58 at Binling Uyen. The Vietnamese deploy elephants with Emperor Tran Tai Tong riding one at the front. Uriyangkadai orders his archers to target the elephant's feet and legs, not the riders, the feet. Arrows hit soft tissue and joints. The elephants panic. They turn. They stampede through their own formations. The Vietnamese line breaks. Uriyangkadai takes Thang Long, the capital. But it's empty. Every grain silo burned, every well poisoned, every road destroyed. The city is a shell. February 1258, and the Mongols are in an empty city watching their supply lines stretch across hostile jungle. Malaria hits. Dysentery spreads through the camp. Every patrol that leaves the city loses men to ambushes. Uriyangkadai pulls out in March. He needed the city as a stepping stone to invade the Song from the south. He got malaria and corpses. The Vietnamese reoccupy Thang Long the day after he leaves. Sugetu can't pin him down. He asks for reinforcements. Kublai agrees but adds conditions. The reinforcements march through Dai Viet. It's a vassal state on paper. Kublai installed a tribute arrangement after Uriyangkadai's raid. But the Tran court hasn't sent princes to the UN court. They haven't sent soldiers. They've paid token silver and ignored everything else. 1284. Prince Togan, Kublai's son, crosses the border with 20,000 troops. Sugetu planned to combine forces and crush both kingdoms. The Tran court under King Tran Nan Tong calls an emergency council at Dien Hong. Every prince, every general, every senior official. The question? Surrender or fight? One voice matters. Tran Quoc Tuan, later called Tran Hung Dao, nephew of the first Tran emperor, born 1226. Commander-in-Chief appointed 1283. He stands and gives his answer. Fight. Every council member votes the same. Fight. Tugan splits his forces to sweep the Red River Delta for supplies. Tran Hung Dao waits. The Mongols spread thin. Rainy season arrives. Tropical diseases hit. Every river crossing is an ambush. Every supply convoy disappears. December 1284 near Van Keep. Prince Tran Khan Du leads a naval force of several hundred warboats. They find the Mongol supply base. Sugetu has been growing rice, harvested 150,000 pixels that summer to sustain the campaign. Tran Khan Du burns it, all of it. January 1285. Prince Quang Kai counterattacks at Chongduang. He cuts off Togan's retreat route. Simultaneously, Tran Hung Dao hits the isolated vanguard at Tay Ket near modern Hung Yen. Generals Sodu and Li Heng die there. Thousands of Mongol troops killed. Togan abandons Thang Long. June 9/12/85. His remaining forces cross back into China. Kublai is furious. He promotes Tran Ich Tak, Nan Tong's defector brother, as Prince of Annam. He plans another invasion, but supply problems in Hunan delay it. Guangxi troops, 17,000 Li auxiliaries from Hainan, 18,000 naval crewmen. Total force, 170,000 men. That's the upper estimate. Lower estimates say 100,000. Either number dwarfs previous attempts. The naval component includes 500 warships and 70 transport ships under 3 commanders. Omar bin Nars al-Din, a Khwarezmian, whose father governed Yunnan for the Mongols. He fought in the conquest of the Song, commanded fleets at Guangzhou in 1278. Fan Yi, Chinese general. Zhang Wenhu, another Chinese commander leading the supply fleet separately. The strategy is a massive pincer. Togan marches south through Guangxi and Yunnan in 3 divisions. The generals are Abachi, Changyu, and others. The navy sails from Qinzhou on December 17, 1287, heading for Van Keep through Bach. Dang River. They plan to meet Togan's land forces in January 1288. Coordination, overwhelming force, no retreat this time. Professional corps units backed by mass mobilization. The Eastern Navy alone has 2,400 sailors. Bin High Navy has 900 sailors on 30 sailboats operating from Van Den Island. At Van Keep in 1285, the Vietnamese deployed over 1,000 medium river sailboats. That's documented fleet strength. The soldiers tattooed 2 characters on their arms. Sat that in modern Vietnamese. Kill Mongols. The entire population mobilizes. The slogan is Ku Quoc Hen Dech, the whole country face to face with the enemy. Togen's cavalry under Prince Arik Kaya takes Pu Luong and Dai Than garrisons, 2 strategic border posts. They rendezvous. A message. The capital falls, but there's no food. Togen orders his generals to sweep the countryside, pillage crops, find rice, gather anything. The army is huge. It eats everything. Meanwhile, Jiang Wenhu's supply fleet slowly sails toward Dai Viet from Qinzhou, loaded with grain, weapons, equipment. Late January 1288, Jiang Wenhu's fleet passes through Ha Long Bay heading for Van Keep. That's when Tran Khan Du and Prince Hung Dao intercept them. Ha Long Bay today is a tourist site. In January 1288, it's a killing field. The Vietnamese Navy attacks Jiang Wenhu's transports. They sink ships, they capture ships, they burn ships. Jiang Wenhu's entire supply fleet is destroyed. Some ships escape. Jiang Wenhu himself survives. But the supplies don't reach Van Keep. The Mongols in Thang Long don't know yet. They're waiting. They think supplies are coming. February 1288, Togen orders attacks on Vietnamese forces. He still believes reinforcement is coming. He controls Thang Long. His troops raid the Red River Delta, but the raids yield less food each week. Farmers have hidden or burned everything. March 5th, 1288. Togen retreats from Thang Long to Van Keep, the fortified base northeast of Hanoi. He realizes supplies aren't coming. The army is starving. He waits at Van Keep for 25 days, hoping for news. Nothing arrives. March 30th, 1288, Togen orders a full retreat to China. The land forces march northwest to Langson. The naval forces under Omar prepare to evacuate via Bac Dang River to the sea, and then north to China. The Vietnamese have destroyed every bridge, burned every road, set traps in every forest. Togen boards a large warship. Then news comes that Vietnamese forces are closing in. He abandons the ship and escapes overland with a small escort through the forests to the Chinese border. His army splinters. Thousands die in ambushes during the retreat. He believes he'll evacuate by sea and link up with supplies coming up the coast. He has 18,000 soldiers, tens of thousands of sailors, 500 warships. He's a skilled commander who won battles against the Song. His fleet is intact. He prepares to exit Bac Dang River, but Tran Hung Dao has been preparing this battlefield since March. Bac Dang River runs through what's now Yen Hung District in Quang Ninh Province and Thuy Nguyen in Haiphong before reaching the sea. It's a tidal river. The tide rises and falls dramatically. In 938, a Vietnamese general named Ngo Quyen used wooden stakes in this river to destroy a Chinese fleet from the Southern Han Dynasty. 350 years later, Tran Hung Dao borrows the exact tactic. For March 1288, he's there studying the river, measuring tides, calculating flow rates. He orders stakes, not wooden, iron-tipped wooden stakes, ironwood. Some stakes are 1.5 meters long, some reach 3 meters. Dark brown treated wood with pointed ends wrapped in iron tips. The distance between stakes averages 0.9 to 1.2 meters. Some stakes stand vertical. Others angle at 45 degrees to catch ships near the banks. The stakes are planted during low tide. When the tide rises, the stakes disappear underwater. Invisible. Tran Hung Dao doesn't plant them in one location. He plants them across the entire river. Genkok Reef across the Bac Dang to the Chan River and Ken River. Stake fields in Cao Kwai Village and Lien Kei commune along the Dabac River, a branch feeding into Bac Dang. Stake fields in Yen Jiang and Quang Ninh near the Chan River. Over 800 stakes documented in surveys. 27 stakes excavated in the Cao Kwai field alone in 2019 date from 1270 to 1430 with concentration around 1288. Carbon dating confirms it. These aren't legend. They're in museums. The Vietnam National Museum of History displays stakes excavated in 1976. 1.5 to 3 meters long, dark brown, one end pointed with fissures from corrosion. They're real. More on Mount Devoy. It's a coordinated ambush involving thousands of soldiers, hundreds of boats, and the river itself. The plan has 3 phases. Phase 1, exhaust the enemy. Phase 2, block escape routes and force them into the main channel. Phase 3, spring the trap. The date is early morning, April 9th, 1288. High tide. The water is deep. Omar's fleet enters the Bac Dang from Van Keep, sailing toward the sea. 500 warships, soldiers and sailors. Omar thinks he's evacuating a successful occupation. He captured the capital. He fought battles. Now he's leaving. The river looks clear. A small Vietnamese fleet appears, maybe 30 or 40 boats. They attack Omar's vanguard. Arrows, fire. Then they retreat downriver. Omar orders pursuit. His captains obey. The entire fleet advances. The Vietnamese boats flee toward the sea. Omar's fleet follows. The tide is high. Everything seems fine. Then the Vietnamese boats stop. They turn. They don't retreat further. Omar's captains wonder why. Behind them, more Vietnamese boats appear from side channels. Hundreds of boats. They're surrounded. But Omar has 500 warships. He orders a full assault. His ships move to engage. That's when the tide turns. Within an hour, the water level drops 2 meters, 3 meters. Omar's warships sit lower. The hulls scrape something, wooden impacts, then harder hits, tearing sounds. The iron-tipped stakes punch through hulls. Ships that were floating now impale on hidden stakes. Some ships tilt, some break apart immediately. Sailors jump into the water. The water is shallow now. They try to wade to shore. Vietnamese troops line both banks. Archers, spearmen. Fire rafts appear. Small boats packed with straw and oil burning. The Vietnamese push them into the Mongol fleet. Ships catch fire. Men burn. Men drown. Ships stuck on stakes can't maneuver. The ones behind crash into the ones ahead. It's chaos. 400 ships out of 500 are destroyed or captured. Historical sources vary. Some say 400 captured. Some say 100 destroyed and 400 captured. Either way, Omar's fleet is annihilated. Omar himself is captured alive. 18,000 soldiers and tens of thousands of sailors killed or captured. The Vietnamese army, led by King Tran Han Tong and Prince Tran Hung Dao, then assault from the banks. It's not a battle, it's a massacre. Omar's remaining soldiers who reach the banks face coordinated Vietnamese formations trained in close combat. Pham Nu Lao, Tran Hung Dao's son-in-law, leads forces that ambush retreating groups. A few days later, Zhang Wenhu, who survived the Ha Long Bay disaster, sails his remaining transport ships into Bac Dang River. He doesn't know Omar's fleet was destroyed. He doesn't know the trap exists. He enters the river. The Vietnamese navy destroys his ships. Zhang Wenhu escapes with a few soldiers. Only a handful survive. At Lang Son, simultaneously, Prince Hung Dao's forces attack Togen's retreating land army. They destroy bridges, block roads, set ambushes. Togen loses thousands more men in the forest. He barely makes it to China alive. Several thousand UN troops unfamiliar with terrain get lost and never reconnect with the main force. Less than 10,000 return. His son Togen beaten again, Omar captured, the fleet destroyed, the supplies lost, entire army annihilated. Kublai banishes Togen to Yangzhou for life. Permanent exile. He demands the return of war prisoners. King Nantong agrees to pay tribute. He agrees to exchange prisoners. In 1289, he agrees to return Omar. But Prince Tran Hung Dao opposes releasing Omar, the man who destroyed the tomb, the fleet commander. Tran Hung Dao arranges for the ship transporting Omar to sink at sea. Omar drowns. Kublai is furious. He detains Vietnamese envoy Dao Tu Ki in 1293. But Kublai dies in 1294. His successor, Timur Khan, releases all detained envoys. The Yuan dynasty settles for nominal tributary relationship. Vietnam sends token tribute every few years. The Yuan don't invade again. They can't. The costs are too high. 3 invasions, 3 defeats, over 200,000 men lost across 30 years. Deng Wikipedia article updated August 2025. Published articles from the Vietnam Institute of Archaeology regarding the Cao Quai stake field excavations, published December 2019. And the Vietnam National Museum of History descriptions of Bac Dang wooden stakes discovered in Chan River in Yen Hung District excavated in 1976. These aren't generic history books. These are archaeological reports, carbon dating results, and stake field excavations with physical evidence displayed in Vietnamese museums today. Now back to the information. Malaria devastates the Mongol camps in 1258, 1285, 1288. Dysentery spreads through troops unfamiliar with tropical water sources. Historical accounts describe Mongol soldiers suffering acute sickness during rainy season. The French in Vietnam in the 1850s faced the same diseases. The Americans in the 1960s faced them. The Chinese People's Liberation Army in Vietnam in the 1970s faced them. It's not legend, it's documented pattern. Tropical disease kills more invaders than combat in Vietnamese history. The second reason is logistics. The Mongols conquer China using Chinese supply networks. They conquer Persia using Persian networks. They conquer Russia using existing roads and supply depots. Vietnam has no such infrastructure. The roads are forest paths. The cities are small. The population spreads across river deltas and jungle. Scorched earth tactics work because there's no large centralized granary. Every village can hide its harvest. When Tran Hung Dao evacuates Thonglong, he doesn't just empty the palace. He destroys everything the Mongols could use. The Mongols enter a city with no food, no supplies, no infrastructure. Then they have to defend it while foraging across hostile territory where every farmer is a guerrilla fighter. The Mongol advantage disappears. By the third invasion, the Yuan army is mostly infantry. 70,000 regulars in 1287, but limited cavalry effectiveness. The Vietnamese know this. They fight where cavalry can't operate. Rivers, swamps, narrow valleys. Every battle is terrain dependent. The fourth reason is naval weakness. The Mongols are land fighters adapting to naval warfare. They conquered the Song with Chinese-built ships and Chinese admirals. Omar himself is skilled, but he's commanding a fleet in unfamiliar waters. The Vietnamese fight on rivers their entire history. Naval warfare is fundamental. They've fought the Chinese on Bac Dang in 938 and 981. They know tidal patterns. They know currents. They know every reef and channel. Omar enters a killing field thinking it's an evacuation route. The Mongols attempted Japan in 1274 and 1281 using the same adapted naval strategy. Both invasions failed. Storms destroyed the fleets, but even before the storms, the Mongols struggled with amphibious warfare. Vietnam is the same pattern. Land-focused empire attempting river warfare against a population that lives on rivers. Tran Hung Dao writes an elementary manual on the military art. He studies asymmetric warfare. He studies No Quien's stake trap from 938. He doesn't repeat it blindly. He expands it. Multiple stake fields, coordinated ambushes, guerrilla harassment combined with regular army assaults. He mobilizes the entire population. 200,000 troops in 1284 is massive for Vietnam's population. That's roughly 1 in 9 citizens. Total mobilization. Compare that to medieval European armies, which rarely mobilize more than 1 in 50 citizens. The Vietnamese commitment is extraordinary. Tran Hung Dao also uses scorched earth without hesitation. Thang Long burns 3 times. The population evacuates 3 times. It's calculated sacrifice. Lose the city, keep the kingdom. The Mongols can't occupy what doesn't exist. Tran Hung Dao also times his attacks. He doesn't fight when the Mongols are strong. He waits for rainy season, disease, supply depletion. Then he strikes isolated units. Van Cape in 1285. Tay Ket in 1285. Lang Son in 1288. He cuts supply lines, burns rice stores, destroys Zhang Wenhu's fleet before it reaches the main force. Every attack is strategic. The Vietnamese are fighting for survival. Mongol rule means tribute, conscription, loss of sovereignty. The Tran court calls the Dien Hong conference, where every official votes to fight. Soldiers tattoo "Kill Mongols" on their arms. That's documented. The population supports the military because they're the same people. The NGU Bin Unong system means soldiers are farmers who go home between campaigns. They're defending their farms. The Mongols are fighting for expansion. It's one campaign among many. Kublai has Japan, Java, Burma, Tibet, Song China. Vietnam is strategic, but not existential. When the costs rise, he can abandon it. The Vietnamese can't abandon it. It's their country. That motivation gap matters. No princes go to the Yuan court. No soldiers join UN armies. Vietnam sends token silver every few years. The relationship is face-saving. Kublai wants to claim Vietnam as tributary. Nantong wants to avoid another invasion. Both get what they need. The Yuan dynasty collapses in 1368. The Ming dynasty that replaces them tries to invade Vietnam in 1466. They occupy Thong Long. The same pattern repeats. Vietnamese General Le Loi wages guerrilla war for 10 years and expels them. The Ming learn what the Mongols learned. Occupying Vietnam costs more than it's worth. French colonial forces in the 1800s face Vietnamese guerrilla warfare. The Viet Minh in the 1940s against the French use similar tactics. Ho Chi Minh explicitly references Tran Hung Dao. The Viet Cong in the 1960s against the United States use the same principles. Terrain advantage, popular support, asymmetric warfare, patience. The United States withdraws in 1973 after failing to pacify the countryside despite overwhelming firepower. It's the same pattern. Foreign invasion, initial success, guerrilla resistance, supply problems, withdrawal. Tran Hung Dao's model works for 700 years. That confirms the battle happened as described. It's not embellished legend. The stakes exist. Museums display them. The Vietnam Institute of Archaeology has excavated multiple sites since 1958. Yanjiang in Quang Ninh, Dong Man Gua in Quang Ninh, Dong Van Moi in Quang Ninh. Over 800 stakes total. In 2019, the Cao Quai excavation in Haiphong finds 27 more stakes, different sizes. Staggered positions, mortises for attaching ropes. They're part of a coordinated system. The archaeologists mapped the Bac Dang battlefield. It's not one trap, it's multiple stake fields across a 10-kilometer stretch of river. Tran Hung Dao doesn't guess where Omar's fleet goes. He covers every possible route. The Dabac River junction, the Gia River estuary, the main Bac Dang channel. Every route has stakes. Omar can't avoid them. Whichever way the fleet turns, there are stakes underwater waiting for low tide. The excavations also show that the battle site extends further than previously believed. Historical sources focused on Quang Ninh. The Cao Quai discovery proves Haiphong is part of the battlefield. That means the Vietnamese coordinated operations across a wider area. Multiple ambush points, multiple troop deployments, multiple strike forces. It's a campaign, not a single engagement. Phase 1. Exhaust the enemy through harassment and supply destruction. Phase 2. Block escape routes, forcing the fleet into the river. Phase 3. The stake trap and coordinated assault. This is sophisticated operational planning in 1288. Small force defeats large force using terrain, preparation, intelligence, timing. The Vietnamese know Omar's fleet has to exit via Bac Dang or stay trapped in Van Keep. They know high tide is the only time large warships can navigate the river. They know low tide exposes the stakes. They control the timing. The small Vietnamese fleet that attacks Omar's vanguard isn't trying to win. It's trying to draw the fleet deeper into the river during high tide. Omar takes the bait. He pursues. By the time the stakes appear, it's too late. 500 ships trapped in a narrow channel with falling tide. The Vietnamese then attack from multiple directions. Ships immobilized on stakes can't fight coordinated assaults. Fire rafts cause panic. Soldiers jumping into shallow water face archers on both banks. It's a systematic destruction. The casualty rate is catastrophic. 18,000 soldiers killed or captured. Tens of thousands of sailors killed or captured. 400 ships destroyed or captured. Omar himself captured. Compare that to famous naval battles. Salamis in 480 BC. The Greeks destroyed 200 Persian ships, Actium in 31 BC. Octavian captures 300 of Antony's ships, Lepanto in 1571. The Holy League destroys 200 Ottoman galleys. Bac Dang in 1288 destroys 400 to 500 ships in one engagement. The scale is comparable to the greatest naval battles in history, but it's almost unknown outside Vietnam. Partly because the Mongol invasions of Vietnam are overshadowed by the Mongol invasions of Europe, the Middle East, China, Japan. But the result matters. Vietnam is the only place where the Mongols suffer repeated military defeats and abandon conquest. They create tributary relationships elsewhere. Korea becomes tributary. The Mongols raid and control. Burma becomes tributary after battles. Java resists in 1293, but it's one campaign. Vietnam defeats 3 invasions across 30 years and maintains de facto independence while paying token tribute. The political outcome is Vietnamese sovereignty. The military outcome is complete Mongol failure. That's unique. No other kingdom stops the Mongols 3 times. After the battle, Vietnamese forces continue pursuing Togen's retreating land army at Lang Son. Pham Ngu Lao leads ambushes along the retreat route. Togen loses thousands more men. Historical sources describe Mongol troops lost in forests, never reconnecting with the main force. Several thousand men disappear. The Vietnamese don't just win at Bac Dang, they destroy the entire invasion force. Land and sea, Togen barely escapes alive. His army is annihilated. He returns to China in disgrace. Kublai's fury is documented. Permanent exile to Yangzhou. That's the grandson of Genghis Khan exiling his own son for losing to Vietnam. The political consequences are severe. The UN court debates whether to invade again. Kublai orders preparations but dies before launching. His successor abandons the plan. The costs are too high. The benefits are too low. Vietnam isn't worth losing another 100,000 men. That calculation shows the magnitude of the defeat. The Mongols conquered cities with millions of people. They crossed deserts and mountains. They defeated armies across 3 continents. But they can't hold a kingdom smaller than Yunnan province. The jungle and the rivers and the people who know every bend stop them cold. The Cao Quai stake field excavation in 2019 adds detail. The stakes aren't randomly placed, they're engineered. Different lengths target different ship types. Vertical stakes target deep-hulled warships. Angled stakes target shallow draft boats near banks. The spacing prevents ships from slipping between stakes. 0.9 to 1.2 meters is too narrow for UN warships, but wide enough that the stakes don't form a visible barrier at high tide. The Vietnamese also use mortises for ropes. That suggests some stakes connect underwater. Maybe a net system. Maybe a way to collapse sections during low tide. The excavations are ongoing. More stake fields might exist. The battlefield archaeology is revealing a more complex defensive system than historical texts describe. The texts focus on the trap. The archaeology shows the trap is one component of a larger battlefield preparation, involving multiple technologies and coordinated engineering. Tran Hung Dao doesn't just repeat No Quien's tactic, he perfects it. The battle proves that small nations can resist empires, that preparation and strategy overcome raw power, that knowing your terrain is a force multiplier. Those lessons resonate for 700 years. When the French colonized Vietnam in the 1800s, Vietnamese resistance invokes Tran Hung Dao. When the Japanese occupy in the 1940s, resistance leaders reference Bac Dang. When the Viet Minh fight the French in the 1950s, Ho Chi Minh explicitly connects his strategy to Tran Hung Dao's. When the United States escalates in Vietnam in the 1960s, North Vietnamese doctrine studies asymmetric warfare, including historical precedents. And the pattern repeats. Foreign invasion, asymmetric defense, attrition, withdrawal. Bac Dang isn't just a battle, it's a template. But the immediate impact in 1288 is regional. Neighboring kingdoms watch Vietnam defeat the Mongols. Champa sees it, Burma sees it, Java sees it. They see that the Mongols can be beaten, that the empire isn't invincible. When the Yuan invade Java in 1292, the Javanese resist, knowing Vietnam succeeded. The invasion fails. Kublai Khan dies in 1294, and his successors stop attempting Southeast Asian conquests. The Mongol Empire pivots. They focus on consolidating China. They campaign against remaining Song remnants. They manage internal rebellions. Southeast Asia becomes peripheral. That shift happens because Vietnam proves the cost is too high. 3 invasions, 200,000 men lost, no territorial gain, no tribute worth the expense. The UN court makes a rational calculation. Vietnam isn't worth it. That calculation saves Southeast Asia from further Mongol campaigns. If Vietnam had fallen in 1288, the Mongols would have used it as a base. Champa would have been crushed. Burma would have faced larger campaigns. Java would have been next. The entire region would have been conquered. Bok Dang stops that. One battle saves an entire region from Mongol domination. That's the strategic significance historians emphasize. It's not just Vietnamese independence, it's regional independence. That's a different story. The Mongol era ends with Vietnamese victory. Complete and permanent victory. Kublai Khan never conquers Vietnam. The Yuan dynasty never conquers Vietnam. The largest empire in history fails against a jungle kingdom with 200,000 troops. That's not random. It forces ships to slow down navigating the curves. At high tide, ships can navigate slowly. At low tide, they're stuck. The zigzag also maximizes stake coverage using fewer stakes. A straight line needs more stakes to cover the same width. A zigzag covers more area with less material. Tran Hung Dao isn't just a general, he's an engineer. The stakes aren't just weapons, they're a system. The entire battlefield is designed. Every component serves a function. The small Vietnamese fleet lures the enemy. The stake fields immobilize them. The fire rafts create panic. The troops on the banks finish them. The tides control timing. The rivers control movement. Tran Hung Dao doesn't fight the Mongols on their terms. He creates terms where the Mongols can't win. That's the definition of asymmetric warfare. Change the battlefield until your weaknesses become irrelevant and your strengths become decisive. Every Mongol advantage is rendered useless. That's strategic genius. It's not about bravery or morale. It's about making the enemy fight your battle. Omar enters the Bok Dang thinking it's an evacuation route. Tran Hung Dao turns it into an execution ground. The Mongols think they're retreating safely. The Vietnamese turn retreat into annihilation. The psychology matters. Omar is confident. He won battles against the Song. He captured cities. He commands 500 ships. He's evacuating a successful campaign. He doesn't expect a trap. He sees the Vietnamese boats and thinks they're harassing his retreat. He pursues. That's the mistake. The moment he commits his fleet to the river at high tide, he loses. The stakes are already there. The Vietnamese forces are already positioned. The tide will fall. Omar can't reverse those conditions. He's trapped before he knows it. That's perfect ambush execution. The enemy doesn't realize they're in danger until escape is impossible. English longbowmen use muddy ground to negate French cavalry. Bok Dang in 1288. The Vietnamese use tides and stakes to destroy the Mongol fleet. The pattern is the same. Small force uses terrain advantage to defeat large force. But Bok Dang has a unique element. It's not just defensive terrain. It's engineered terrain. The stakes are artificial. Tran Hung Dao modifies the battlefield. He doesn't just use the river. He weaponizes it. That's a different level of planning. It's not opportunistic. It's premeditated. He knows weeks in advance that Omar will evacuate via Bok Dang. He knows the tide schedule. He knows the channel depth. He plants stakes accordingly. When the battle starts, he's already won. The execution is just timing. Phase 1 begins in January 1288, when the Vietnamese destroy Zhang Wenhu's supply fleet at Ha Long Bay. That's not a separate battle. It's Phase 1. Cut supply lines. Force the enemy to choose between starving in Thang Long or retreating. Togen chooses retreat. Phase 2 begins in March, when Togen withdraws to Van Keep, and the Vietnamese destroy roads and bridges. They're channeling the retreat. Land route is blocked. Sea route via Bok Dang becomes the only option. Omar has to use the river. The Vietnamese force that choice. Phase 3 is April 9th, the trap. Omar enters the river. The tide falls. The fleet dies. 3 phases across 3 months. Coordinated operations. Strategic planning. Tran Hung Dao is conducting a campaign, not reacting to events. Every Vietnamese action pushes the Mongols toward the trap. That's sophisticated military thinking. In the 13th century, a few thousand surrender. Omar is captured. Several commanders are killed. Togen escapes, but his army doesn't. That casualty rate is catastrophic. Compare it to other Mongol campaigns. The Mongol invasion of Khwarezmia in 1219 kills hundreds of thousands, but the Mongol army survives. The invasion of Hungary in 1241 devastates the kingdom, but the Mongol forces retreat intact. Vietnam in 1288 destroys the invasion force. The difference matters. The Mongols lose campaigns elsewhere but retain their armies. Vietnam kills the army. That's why they don't return. There's no force left to return. Kublai would need to raise another 100,000 men, train them, equip them, transport them, and gamble that the result wouldn't be the same. After 3 failures, the gamble isn't worth it. That calculation is based on casualties. Vietnam doesn't just resist, it annihilates. That's the message that reaches the UN court. Invade Vietnam and your army dies. That message ends Mongol expansion in Southeast Asia. Concentration around 1288. The stakes are ironwood, limb, and sen species. Diameters range from 10 to 40 centimeters. They're found in a filled riverbed along the Da Bac River. The report states that historical documents combined with archaeological evidence confirm Cao Kwai is part of the 1288 battlefield. Dr. Leti Lien from the Institute explains that the battle involved both soldiers and civilians under Tran Hung Dao's leadership. When the tide was low, the stakes emerged. Mongol boats stuck and troops tried to land. They bogged down in mud and were burned by Vietnamese guerrillas. That description matches historical texts. The archaeology proves that texts are accurate. The stakes exist. The battlefield exists. The battle happened as described. That's the final proof. Bac Dang isn't myth. It's documented history verified by physical evidence. Tran Hung Dao dies in 1300. 74 years old, he's buried at Van Keep, where the Mongols established their base. The same location where he planned the Bac Dang ambush. That's symbolic. The place where the Mongols thought they'd stage their conquest becomes the resting place of the general who destroyed them. His tomb becomes a pilgrimage site. His name becomes synonymous with Vietnamese resistance. 700 years later, his tactics are still studied in Vietnamese military academies. The principle is the same. Know your terrain, use your advantages, neutralize the enemy's strengths, wait for the right moment, strike decisively. That's the legacy, not just a victory, a doctrine.